I know you wrote an article for BrownsFilmBreakdown.com. 5 veterans that need strong off seasons. Take us through that article and who you were thinking.
Yeah, so I tried to talk through this with listeners as best I could about guys that just really need sort of to establish themselves to extend their relationship, right? So they're on rookie contracts or the end of a second contract and really need to have a strong offseason to put themselves in the best place, and then obviously a strong season to extend the relationship with. So at the top is Dewan Jones. I think it feels like he gets the first crack at left tackle. You have heard some rumblings about him losing some weight. We'll see what that ultimately looks like. I think he's 6'8", 400 last year at times. I think he's got to be more 6'8", 350 or just south of that to ease the burden on those knees and ankles, which have cost him 2 seasons. Cut short. So if he wants to play 17 ball games, he wants to get paid like a real NFL tackle, a second contract. He's got an opportunity here. It feels like he gets the first crack at left tackle. We'll see what they do rotationally. Most of his NFL starts have been on the right side, which is what he did mostly at Ohio State. But it feels like they would rather have Conklin play the right side, let him get a crack at the left side, which he did a couple games, before the injury in New Orleans. He got a chance to play on the left side. It was very uneven, but it's a real adjustment. But they think he's got a little bit has high school experience, and then his first few starts at Ohio State in his younger portions of his career were the left side. So it's not totally foreign to him, but he needs to be healthy. He needs to be able to move, and it's a wildly important season for him. Third year. If you have a great third year on your 4-year rookie contract, you got a chance to sign an extension going into year 4. That's what you want. You don't love to leave things up in the air going into your 4th year. Could always start the year strong and then have maybe a mid-season extension. The Browns haven't been afraid to do that, but boy, would it help the longevity of where this offensive line is going, because we know between left guard to right tackle, it's a bunch of veterans who are either Joel is retiring after another year. You got Conklin's contract up. You got Posick, who's going to be in the contract popped off scenario where he's going to be done with his deal. And then Wyatt Teller also going to be at the end of his deal. Those guys have all been paid pretty handsomely by the organization. We'll see if they can get some of that hunger back and play better this year. But getting Dewan to kind of anchor the left side would be a really good answer in a year they did not draft a tackle because it didn't really fall in their lap to take one. So Dewan is the first one. Martin Emerson, 2 pretty strong years. I mean, let me put it this way. I thought his first year, his rookie year, was his best year because it was pre-Jim Schwartz era, which was more of the Joe Woods zone-based system. And since they've gone to a man system with Martin, it's been uneven. His first year was better. Last year, as we know, was a major regression. They like him. They like his attitude. They like his physical nature. They like his body type. But the quickness and the twitch stuff that makes you need, the elements you need to be a really good man corner are uneven, and it got picked on last year, and I'm worried about it. So he needs a strong offseason. I know this sounds silly, but he switched to the number 1, which is a strong indication of like they're a respected veteran. And because Kevin doesn't give away single-digit numbers to players that are not established in the organization, but they need him to be better, especially as they made that decision to move Greg Newsome, who was a first-round pick, off of playing outside after his rookie year and inside. And it would be a real bummer to lose both young players because they're not performing in your defense after the season, because you just can't get enough out of them. So that would be, ideally at one of those two. It's an important year for Greg Newsome, but I really do lean Emerson because outside corners and his body type are so rare that it would just solve so much of their future if he had a second contract as a part of the defense. Mahmoud Diabate is the next one. I'll kind of breeze through these quickly. Played a lot last year because Jordan Hicks dealt with injuries off and on, especially with his arm bicep injury. And then he played when JOK lost to the season after week 8 there. We know they invested in Carson Schlesinger. We know Jordan Hicks is back, and they brought some veterans back around them. They also drafted a young guy the year before. He played a lot. He played relatively well early in the season, but the last 5 weeks, 6 weeks was really rough. Now, he's a guy who was a UDFA. He transferred from more of a edge linebacker, more of a stand-up edge rusher to a off-ball linebacker between college and the NFL. There's been some really good. There's also been some really uneven stuff going on too. So does he find a role? He's got to compete for it all offseason with Schlesinger, with Hicks, with the other veterans at that position group. We'll see. It would be nice. He's an athletic young man. He's obviously a really good person from everything you hear. So I would really like him to figure out, like, if he could be the running mate next to Schlesinger for the foreseeable future because he starts to really solidify himself, that would help ease some of that linebacker burden. We'll see what happens with JOK. That's kind of a domino, a wild card hanging out there for the future. We know you don't get him this year, but the book doesn't seem to be closed. So that's one worth paying attention to. Cedric Tillman, the Browns didn't really draft, as we know, or really invest in a wide receiver this offseason. They did bring in Deontay Johnson, but after the draft, they didn't draft anybody. So it's Tillman and it's Judy. And then we're going to play some Harold Fannin, and we're going to play some, Johnson a little bit here and there. We got Jamari Thrash in another year, second year in the league. The pressure's on Tillman. Can he be the guy who he was for 3 weeks when they lost Amari Cooper to that trade? He had a lot of targets. He had a lot of production. He looked like he could play inside, outside, more outside than inside, and be an effective outside receiver, leveraging the sideline, but also an ability to hit in-breaking routes and catch difficult throws. He had obviously the huge catch against the Ravens for the win. And I think there's something there. I think they believe in him going into year 3, but like I'm saying, there's a kind of a common theme here. Year 3 needs to be good for him going into year 4, where you're at the end of your rookie deal and it sort of gets a little uneven. So Tillman is one that I am paying very close attention to, obviously working off of Jerry Jeudy. And then I still think Deontay Johnson, if the attitude is right, is a pretty decent route runner and separator who could have some opportunity here if Cedric can't stay healthy, which has been a problem his first 2 years. We know he's lost last 6 weeks of last year because of concussions, and that's, hey, I get it. That's dicey. It's tough, but it ultimately is that best ability is availability. So we will see what shakes out there. And then the last one for me, kind of looking at my list here, is probably one not many people think of, but David Njoku's in the final year of his contract, and they drafted Harold Fannin, who is a pass weapon that I think they're going to deploy with him. But does that mean that Harold Fannin is taking over that room because the contract with David doesn't get worked out, or they feel like they want to go cheap? They're going to have to go cheap somewhere at some point, and maybe they feel like they can use some different blocking types around Fannin. Maybe I believe he's an adequate blocker, but he's not David. He's not that big of an athlete. I mean, David is a specimen, but ultimately David's approaching 30. He needs another contract, which is going to be a bit on the higher side again. I don't know if it'll be as lucrative as his second contract, but look at his 23 season when he finally had a nice year, up over 900 yards. He had 130 targets and upward of 90 catches, but every other year has been, sort of that 500-yard range throughout his career, and they can't pay giant money for that continually if the blocking's not as good. So you got to think last year hurt at the early portion of the season, and then didn't block as well as he has in his career, and the pass game production took a dip back to a little bit more of who he's been. So I think David needs a really strong offseason. I think he needs to have a really strong year north of 800 yards, and that's where you start to see maybe a midseason third contract for him, which would be awesome. You love your guys getting third contracts. That's kind of lingering for the likes of him and Grant Delpit and Denzel Ward, those guys that you want to be. Third contract players are where your team turns into a culture of this is who we are. When you get 4 or 5, 6 guys on those third deals, you develop them, you keep them. And since they're not paying a quarterback beyond the next 2 years, Watson will fall off there. And at some point, they do have a way of leveraging a little bit of that money and kind of trying to push things off in the future. But you got to prove that you're worth that investment for a third contract. And that's where I think David, with having that direct draft right behind him with a player like Harold Fannin, a pick 67 is a serious pick. You got to see how that shakes out and what kind of usage they want to have for Fannin. So I think it's a big year for David.